We're Brad and Jill Sullivan, and we're here today to share our daughter's story and to talk to you a little bit about While We're Waiting and how the ministry began. Our daughter Hannah went to heaven. She was 17, but a little bit about her. She was, as all of our kids, she was incredible. And I was her principal, and she was one of my students. Great student, made straight A's, very involved in the church, very involved in her family. She loved the Lord. Went on mission trips. I was proud of her as a dad and also as a principal. She was a great daughter. But when she was 16, she started having some symptoms, and we ended up in the doctor's office, and we found out that she had a brain tumor and a tumor between her ears. And I remember the day that I found out that Hannah had a brain tumor, and Jill and Hannah had come home from the doctor, and I had been there earlier but had gone back to work, and I met them in the driveway, and Hannah got out of the car, and she looked at me and walked up to me, and she said, "Dad, I've got a brain tumor." And that news took the air out of my lungs. It was crushing. So we first thing we did is we called our neighbor, who is a retired pastor, and he came down and talked to us and prayed with us, and he shared a verse with us, Nahum 1:7. "The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him." And then we prayed together as a family. And I remember praying and saying, "God, we trust you." And at that moment, and from that point on, we started feeling peace like we've never felt. The peace that passes all understanding. Philippians 4:7. Didn't like the news that we were processing, but we had peace. We were in Children's Hospital the next morning. Met with the doctors and a team of doctors, and planned to take the tumor out. And something I like to share is we were leading up to the surgery, and Jill had gone home, and I was with Hannah that night, and Hannah shared with me, right before we were trying to go to sleep that night, she said, "Dad, I got to tell you something." And she said, "Dad, back in our youth group at church, we had a weekend retreat. And at that retreat, we had the leaders share with us how God allows storms in your life to bring you closer to him and to allow others to see him through your storm." And she went on to explain to me, "Dad, our lives, we've had calm waters, but I want you and Mom to know that I prayed for a storm that God might use me." And that was a comfort to us as we processed what she had told us, and that God was preparing her and was with her. And that's something that, as we look back at her journey with cancer, she accepted it with grace and without fear. And that wasn't her nature. That was God within her. Something that we talk about is how we don't want to waste this experience as well. And as we look at While We're Waiting, this is part of our passion, is we don't want to waste that storm. So we had the tumor resected, and basically she lived a year going through treatment, and just saw her health deteriorate, and she went to heaven basically a year after she was diagnosed. But the comfort I have is the fact that she knew her Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and she had prayed to accept Christ. And my last communication I had with her in hospice was, I said, "Baby girl, are you ready to go be with Jesus?" And she nodded her head yes. That's a comfort to know that she was at peace, and I know where she's at. I hold on to the promises of God, the truth of the Bible, and the hope of heaven. It's not over. I'm going to see my daughter again. So that's a little bit about our daughter Hannah. She was an amazing girl, and I'll let Jill visit about what transpired after that.
That last 8 days of Hannah's life we spent at a hospice center in Little Rock, and while we were there, lots of people came by and brought, books and gifts and food and things like that. And somebody we didn't know actually came by and left a book at the front desk, and it was a book called Holding On to Hope by Nancy Guthrie. And I read the back cover, and Nancy has lost 2 children, 2 babies. And as I read that back cover, I thought, I wonder why somebody brought us this book, because it really didn't seem to have anything to do with our situation. So it just kind of went in that stack of books that everybody brings to you when you're going through a situation like that. And but after Hannah went to heaven and I got back home, and by the time I was ready to start reading something again, out of all the books we had been given, that was the book that I was drawn to, and I started reading. And as I read that book, Nancy and her husband lost 2 babies to a problem that's a terminal condition that babies can be born with. It's called Zellweger syndrome. And in her book, she addressed all kinds of issues about the sovereignty of God and what you do with it when your child is diagnosed with a terminal illness, and you pray for healing and you believe that God can heal and sometimes does heal, yet He does not choose to heal your child. And so it was really exactly what I needed to be reading at that time. It was just very reassuring after some of the things that we had experienced. So I ended up getting on her website and discovered that she and her husband host retreats for bereaved parents in Nashville, Tennessee. And it was an intriguing concept to me because we had already figured out that the people we most felt comfortable with were other parents that had lost children. And so the idea was intriguing to me, but I'm not really a retreat person. I am not somebody who likes to go into a setting where I don't know anyone, especially to talk about something like the death of my child. But I brought the idea to him and I told him about it, and I said, this sounds really awesome and like something that would be great to do, but I don't want to go. And of course, he was all in. He loves to go new places and meet new people, but we didn't go to that first retreat. But I did end up getting on her email list, and I would get an email whenever they had another retreat coming up, and I would get those emails, and I knew that it was something that we needed to do for us. So even though it was way outside my comfort zone, we signed up and we went, and it was by far the best thing that we had done since Hannah went to heaven. There were people at that retreat from 11 different states in Canada, and our stories were all very different, yet the bond that we formed with those people was instant and it was lasting. We still keep in touch with a lot of those folks today. So while we were there, we already started talking about the idea of bringing a retreat type ministry back home to Arkansas. And we came home from that event, we talked about it a lot, we prayed about it, we talked to different people about it, but we just didn't have any kind of catalyst to move us forward with the idea. And then Adam Brown went to heaven.
Hi, we're Larry and Janice Brown, and we'd like to tell you a little bit about our son Adam.
Larry and I have 3 children. Our oldest is Sean, and then when he was about 4 years old, Larry's brother was killed in a car accident or a motorcycle accident. And up until that time, we had decided we'd just have the one child. And we realized how much siblings meant to us at that time. So we decided that we would give Sean a brother or sister. And we did. We had twins, Adam and Amanda. Amanda's 3 minutes older than Adam, so that makes Adam the baby of the family. And actually, Adam loved that. He was very happy for Amanda and I to take care of him. And their senior year in high school, both of them came to me. And they said, "Mom, we're just having so much fun in high school, we don't want to graduate." And but life changes and we have to go to our next phase, and that next phase for them was college. And the last one to go was Adam, the baby. So Amanda and I loaded him up, took him to college. We fixed his room up for him, we helped him get unloaded, and I came downstairs, gave him a lot of hugs and kisses, because that's how Adam was, he loved that. And we we got in the car to leave and turned around and looked back, and there was Adam. He was standing out in the middle of the parking lot. He just looked so lost, and in a way Adam truly was. And he started coming home on weekends, and Larry and I were noticing different things about him. I mean, it was just, he was different, and we thought, well, maybe this is just his way of maturing. Before Larry and I really understood what was going on, Adam was completely addicted to crack cocaine. And we were devastated. And so I can remember Larry coming home one night, and I was like, Larry, he's gone again. What do we do now? And Larry just took my hand and he said, you know, we can't do this. We need God. We've got to go to church. But when Larry said that, that just seemed to make so much sense to me. So the next time the doors were open at church, we were there. And I started hearing the preacher talk about Jesus. I joined a Sunday school class that was just full of mature Christian women. And I couldn't wait to get back to class every week, because these women were talking about how they lived their life that week according to God's Word. And I didn't even know you could do that, but I knew I wanted to. So one night, I was in my kitchen, and I had been reading my Bible, and I got down on my knees. I asked Jesus to forgive me of my sins, to come into my heart and be the leader of my life. And He did that very moment. And that's when Larry and I both decided that we had to turn Adam over to the Lord.
You know, after Adam had his problems with drugs and into the drug and alcohol scene, and I realized that I had not been the spiritual leader of my home. I knew Christ, I knew Jesus, I knew who He was, but I'd never committed my life to Jesus. And when I realized that where Adam was and the situation that he was in, it just made me realize that Jesus was the only one that could help Adam, that I was not capable of it. You know, when Adam was young, he was a very strong-willed child. He was never disrespectful or anything like that, but he would push the boundaries. I remember one night he called and asked if he could come by and talk to us, and I said, well, certainly. And he came, and we were sitting out on my front porch or back porch, and he said, Dad, I've always felt like I could overcome anything with just sheer willpower and the desire and just the want to do it. And I felt, he said, I felt like I could do it. He said, but these drugs have got me, and I can't quit them, and they're going to kill me. I can't tell you the depths of pain that puts you through to see your child in that position. But we got through that, but it wasn't just a little while longer that Adam was arrested. He was put in jail. And while he was in jail, I went to one of my pastors and asked him to go talk to Adam. And Adam, Mike Smith, Brother Mike, went up to talk to Adam. And they're in a little old visitation cell. He led Adam to the Lord, and Adam come to know Jesus. And the judge gave him the option, said, you can go to prison for 1 year, or you can go to 1 year at Teen Challenge. And Teen Challenge is a Christ-centered, Bible-based rehab center, and so he chose to go to Teen Challenge. And he spent 14 months in Teen Challenge, and he come back, and he was Adam again. He was this hard-charging, hard-working, just really neat kid. And and he still struggled, but now he had some weapons. He knew how to apply the power of Jesus. Then he decided that he wanted to get married, and he wanted to join the Navy. And so when he told me he's going to join the Navy, I said, "Oh, Adam." And he said, "No, I'm not going to lie to him. I'm just going to tell him like it is. But this is where God wants me, and that's where I want to be." And so that's where God showed up, and God started working, and God arranged it to where he got in the Navy, and then he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And so he was in the Navy for a couple of years. He went through SEAL training and was in the SEAL teams, and he made it into the teams. And you know, most of the guys, when they get out of the SEALs or into the SEAls, most of them want to go to the SEAL Team 6, which is the tip of the spear, so to speak. And of course, Adam wanted to do that too, and so he was very pleased that Team 6 is, you don't ask to join that. They ask you if you'd like to try out for them. This time he tried out, and he made it into SEAL Team 6 with one eye and limited use of one hand. And that's just because he was where God wanted him, and God provided what he needed, how he needed it, and when he needed it. And so Adam was in Team 6 for 3 or 4 years and made quite a few deployments. And he called me before his last deployment and said, Dad, I think God is telling me to get out of the Navy, but I've got this one last deployment. He said, while I'm on this deployment, I want us to pray that God would show me what I'm supposed to do after I get out of the Navy. And we prayed together that night on the phone, and actually we quoted one of our favorite scriptures, that Romans 8:28, for we know that all things work together for good for those that love God, those that are called according to his purpose. Well, about 3 weeks later, Adam was assigned, him and his group, to go up somewhere in the Hindu Kush Mountains and capture a high value target, and they basically got ambushed themselves, and Adam was caught in the crossfire trying to get some of his buddies that were trapped out, and Adam was shot and killed. And that was March 17th of 2010. The last 2 words he said, as he was, they were trying to get him into this helicopter to try to get him somewhere for medical attention. And the last 2 words he said were, "I'm okay." You know, and I know Adam is okay, because Adam had prepared. Adam knew Jesus Christ as his personal Savior. Adam had committed himself to Jesus. And I know that when he drew his last breath and when his heart beat the last time, that he was ushered into the arms of Jesus. And I'm going to think Jesus told him, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." You know, and we've done quite a few of these retreats since we've had the privilege of being with this ministry, and it's always our desire that everyone know that when we're called home, when we leave this life, that we know where we're going, that we know we have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and that we're going to go to heaven because of that relationship with Jesus. And we urge every one of you, if you don't know, if you're not certain in your heart that you know Jesus Christ, I want you to talk to someone. Don't leave. Just let's get this settled.
So we actually went to the same church with Larry and Janice, but we didn't really know them. They're a little bit older than we are, so they had kind of a different circle of friends than we do. They sit on the opposite side of the church than we do, so we just really hadn't had a chance to get to know them. But after Adam was killed, we began to notice them. We knew who they were then. And we actually would come in the back door where they were greeters, and there was just this understanding that would pass between us without us even having to say a word. And one Sunday we decided to invite them to lunch. And so they graciously agreed to go, and we went and sat down in a Mexican restaurant just down the street and had a 3.5-hour lunch. And you know, it seems like we wouldn't have had anything in common because our stories were so different, but we actually, just like all bereaved parents, had everything in common. And so as we talked, we eventually told them about this retreat we had gone to and what we felt like was a God-given desire to start a retreat type ministry like that here in Arkansas. And these folks who we were meeting for the very first time looked at us and said, "Let's do it." And we kind of looked at each other like, "Oh, okay." And so we started talking, and before we left the restaurant that day, we already had a location in mind. We had a date in mind. We knew we wanted to do that in the following spring. And we're even beginning to talk about a name for this ministry. So it happened that fast. We planned our first retreat for April of 2011 at a little a Christian day camp on the outskirts of town. The people that run that camp are Stan and Donna May, and they lost their son, I guess it was about 20 years previously at that time. And so we contacted them. They immediately said, "Yes, absolutely, you can come out here and do this retreat." And so we began the process of planning. And we didn't have a website or really any way to get the word out at that time. So it was basically just word of mouth, a few people that we knew from church and a couple other people. And we had that retreat, and we just kind of like to tell the story about how, you know, we told the parents that they could arrive anytime between 4 and 5:30, just like we do with all of our retreats. And about 3 o'clock that afternoon, we were just sitting there and we were so nervous. We were afraid that no one was going to come. But then we were also afraid that they were going to come because we didn't know what we were doing. But we had that retreat. They all came,
Yes.
And it was wonderful. It was such a blessing to
Yes.
be a part of that first group that we had. And it was just a confirmation that God was in this. And so we began having retreats twice a year out there at Family Farm, that day camp. The lodging left a lot to be desired. It was a children's camp, so it was bunk room style sleeping. There was a bunk room for men and a bunk room for women, which was not ideal, but we did retreats there for 5 years and had wonderful, wonderful retreats at that location. But over time, you know, we got a website, we got a social media presence, and as people would come to retreats and they would go home and tell others about it, and word began to spread.
Word of mouth was the best advertisement.
Yes, absolutely. And so before long, 2 retreats a year was nowhere near enough. And so we started doing retreats in other locations, you know, just trying to get by. People would register for a retreat and we would have to tell them it would be a year or maybe longer before they could get in. And so we began doing retreats in other locations, but it was difficult because we really didn't know where we were going and having to carry everything here and there. And so we began to feel like God may be calling us to actually build a building, a retreat center that could be dedicated just to this type of retreats. And Larry and Janice had an old house that they had owned, and it was built in the 70s. It was an older home. They had not lived in it for a number of years, but they had never sold it. They had just kind of held on to it, and now we know why, and it's because God had a big plan for that little house. And we drove out there one night and looked at that house, and it was hard to imagine how this little 3-bedroom ranch-style home could possibly be transformed into a retreat center. But you know, God provided in ways that we could not have imagined. He provided an architect who came out and looked at the property, and we shared with him what we had in mind. We knew we didn't want bunk rooms anymore. We wanted guest rooms, and we wanted 10 of those. So each couple or single could have their own space. We wanted a nice dining area and meeting area that was like a living room, that was comfortable, where people could feel safe and warm and as if they were at home. And this architect came out and he drew us up a plan. And a beautiful plan. It was exactly what we had in mind. And he presented us the plan a few weeks later, and we asked him, well, what would it cost to take this little house and change it into this retreat center? And he actually told us to sit down, and he said it'll cost $1 million. And you know, we don't charge for our retreats. So in our While We're Waiting account at that time, we had $3,000, and really no means of raising any money. But we went out and we talked to our friends out there at Family Farm, Stan and Donna May, who had partnered with us from the very beginning. And we told them what we felt God was calling us to do, but we said, you know, we're gonna have to raise a lot of money before we can even get started. And I'll never forget Mama May saying to us, no, you don't. No, you don't. She said, you start and God will provide.
So we broke ground and started the project, and we never stopped for the next 18 months. And at the end of that 18 months, we had completed this project debt-free. And God provided at every turn. And that's just a testimony to who God is and how He takes care of us. We did our first retreat here, and we started having more people come here, and that created more interest because people would go back to their hometowns and their states, and so we kept getting more and more interest here, and now God is providing opportunities around the country, and God is providing those free of charge. People are paying it forward, and others that see the ministry and see how it's impacting others, they're helping support the ministry. This ministry is not Brad and Jill and Larry and Janice's ministry. This is God's ministry. This is our ministry. And that's been the heart of the ministry, is the people. And the people who go back and they share the hope they have in Jesus, and they talk to other people about that hope. And that's truly where God is using the While We're Waiting ministry. It's the people. And it's us sharing our story and others sharing their story, and pointing others to the hope of Jesus, and helping us to focus on heaven and eternity and having that eternal perspective. And I think God has used that to grow the ministry, and given the platform that God is giving us as bereaved parents, all of us, is an opportunity to minister the gospel and share the hope of Jesus. And that's been really, really cool to see what God has done. And we get to hear, the four of us, as we hear these stories at these retreats, we get to hear what God has done and what He's doing. And then we get to, as we make those connections, as Jill referred to you as the people we've met at retreats, they're part of our family. And we get to see God working in their lives and what He's doing, and that has been a blessing to the four of us for sure, and the other facilitators, and then the people that are part of the ministry, they get to see it too. I mean, there's people that attend retreats and connect with other people. So the family of bereaved parents stay connected, and that's been really good, and they become our, as we were saying, they're our best friends now. I mean, because we're like-minded in so many ways, and but we focus on the hope we have in Jesus. So it's been exciting, and we're also excited about what God's going to do in the future, because God is raising up people to go out and minister, and it's not about the four of us again. It's about God using people for His purpose, and people need to see the hope that we have, and we always know, we talk about this a lot at the retreats, we know that we're on a pedestal and people are watching us, and when they see the hope that we have, not that we're not perfect, but they see the hope we have, God can use it, and that's what we're also grateful for. So many things that we're grateful for, but God has provided and a group of people to minister to others, and that's the bottom line.
If you think back to the way this story began, I told you that a lady came, somebody we didn't even know, and brought us a book. And God called her to do that, and she was obedient to bring that book to us. And because of her one single act of obedience, you are at this retreat this weekend. If she had felt like she was too busy, or she had said, I don't know those people, why would I bring them a book? But no, God called her to do that, and she did it. And I read that book, we went to that retreat, and that is how While We're Waiting came to be. And so we always kind of like to close our visits by just reminding you to be obedient to whatever it is God is calling you to do. Sometimes when our child goes to heaven, we feel like we have to do something big in their memory, start a ministry or a scholarship fund or something like that. And those things are wonderful. But you know what? Sometimes the very smallest thing, like bringing someone a book or sending someone a card or a text or giving somebody a phone call, may seem little to us, but it can have huge ramifications. So just one thing we always like to urge you is just to be obedient to whatever it is God might be calling you to do.
And I would like to also say that, when we're obedient and we do what God has called us to do, we're honoring God and we're honoring our children. And what more can make us happy is to do what God has called us to do and be obedient, but also to honor our children. And we think about this ministry, and we think about there's been a lot of obedience in this ministry. We talk about the card, but there's people that have been obedient to just even come, and then God uses it from there. And then they've done acts of kindness and reached out to others and invited others and just been obedient to be a part of this ministry, and knowing they can help others with their story and to share that hope. So be obedient, whatever that may be. And it's exciting to see how God can use that. So again, we're excited and grateful that you had the opportunity to come, and we wish you the best, and I look forward to maybe meeting you someday. We know we have eternity, and that's what's most important.